Should millennials invest in Bitcoin? Let's find out. In today's episode, I'll be explaining what Bitcoin is, the bull and bear cases for investing in Bitcoin, and how to do so if you're interested. Cha-ching! If you enjoy watching our videos, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Bitcoin is a super popular investment among millennials. According to polls, millennials are 3 times more likely to invest in Bitcoin than our Gen Xers. Even more interestingly, a study revealed that 27% of millennials would rather invest in Bitcoin than in stocks. It makes me wonder, why is this the case? Is this preference warranted, or is it just purely down to hype? Are people buying Bitcoin because they believe in its potential, or is it because their friends told them there's something good to buy? Young people tend to be easily influenced by their friends. With the vast amount of information that's available on the internet, it's easy for any one of us to go on there and make our own decision on whether Bitcoin is a good investment or not. We notice that views on Bitcoin are either way too bullish, where people say that the value will go up to $1 million a Bitcoin, or way too bearish, where people say that it will be absolutely worth zero in a few years' time. I would say that it's not too good reading up too much on these type of articles because the authors are too biased onto what side they prefer. What we're going to do is, we're going to take on the bull cases and the bear cases and come up with our own conclusion and recommendation for all of you. Do remember that what we say is not financial advice and that all of you should do your own research before making your decisions. Now, let's start off. What actually is Bitcoin? Bitcoin was made to become a digital currency that wasn't backed by any fiat currency. What this means is, if we own one Bitcoin, we can't go to the bank and exchange it for a fixed amount of money. We can only get what others are willing to pay. It started in 2009 during the Great Financial Recession. The purpose of Bitcoin was to become a decentralized currency, meaning it wasn't backed or regulated by any particular central bank. The Malaysian ringgit is regulated by the Bank Negara, and the USD is regulated by the Federal Reserve. This means that they have the ability to control money supply. During the global financial crisis and the more recent pandemic, governments all around the world had to start pumping out money to their citizens to prevent a really bad economic downturn. Had it not been for their interventions, stock markets would be way worse off than they are today. The main problem is, where does the US government get their money from? Well, the answer is, they print more money. What happens then is that the supply of fiat currencies increases and the value of it decreases. And this makes us all poorer. Let me explain to you why. Let's just imagine that tomorrow, when all of us wake up, everyone sees 1 million ringgit in their bank accounts. Would be great, right? If I had $1 million in my bank account tomorrow, I'm gonna be thinking, let's go out and buy my house. I get up, I dress up, and I'm all ready to go to the real estate agents to start paying for my house in cash. I mean, I have $1 million, who cares? I head over to the office, and to my surprise, there's so many people there as well. Turns out, everyone had the same idea as me. They all wanted to buy a house because they all had $1 million in their bank accounts. The real estate agent realizes this and he decides to double the prices of houses because of the surge in demand. In return, house developers charge double the cost for labor and raw materials to build these houses. The price of everything doubles and suddenly no one can afford houses again. Employees all around Malaysia realize that everything is more expensive now and they demand more from their employers. Prices of everything goes up and nothing much is gained. The main problem of all of this happens to your savings. Imagine you've worked hard for your whole life and over 20 years you've managed to save up 1 million ringgit. Overnight, everyone has it, just like that. When everyone has so much money, what happens to the value of your 1 million ringgit? It's not as great as it was before. If I saved up 1 million ringgit and you have 100,000 ringgit, I'll be worth 10 times more than you. Suddenly, if everyone gets 1 million ringgit overnight, I'm only worth less than 2 times more than you. This is a problem if you hold too much cash. Getting back to the topic, this was the whole purpose that Bitcoin was created. The only way to increase the supply of Bitcoin is through mining it, and there's no one in this world that can just imaginarily print Bitcoin. I just want to explain a bit what Bitcoin mining is, but as a disclaimer, I'm not 100% sure of how this works, so some things that I say might be wrong. Let's give it a shot though. As a digital currency, Bitcoin can be used in making transactions. For example, if I wanted to buy something from my store, I can give them Bitcoin in exchange for the goods. Every time a transaction is made though, this needs to be verified and audited. The reason for this is Bitcoin is a digital currency. meaning I store it somewhere in my computers. To ensure I don't start duplicating my Bitcoin by just copy and pasting, there needs to be a record of every transaction that has been made to make sure that the same Bitcoin isn't being used twice. To verify a transaction, Bitcoin miners have to solve complex puzzles using their computers. Solving this puzzle is less so solving a puzzle than random guesswork, and only the first miner who solves this problem will be rewarded with Bitcoin. For the most part, mining Bitcoin can be very expensive, so not many people try it. Since this is the only way to increase the supply of Bitcoin, the supply is very much controlled and limited, and no one can just print more whenever they need it. This then prevents massive inflation that could happen with central banks all around the world right now printing lots of money out of thin air. Let's start with the bull cases for Bitcoin, or some of the positive things that could really drive its prices up. First of all, Bitcoin is a hedge against a devaluing paper currency. When people start losing faith in the fiat currencies like the US dollar and the Malaysian ringgit, people will look for safer assets to put their money in. Historically, some of these safe haven assets included things like gold, silver, and palladium. Now, I need to be absolutely clear that I'm not saying that Bitcoin is a safe haven asset. It's absolutely not. But the thing is, people are really starting to lose faith in the central banks due to the ability to just print money out of nowhere. If one day Bitcoin really starts to see its adoption go up and stores all around the world start accepting it, then it could possibly be a good hedge to protect yourself against inflation. The second bull case for Bitcoin is it's really starting to see this adoption pick up. Many European countries are starting to allow it, which gives peace of mind for a lot of its investors. In some countries, KFC, Starbucks, and Burger Kings are starting to explore accepting Bitcoin as a payment method. Some payment processors also allow Bitcoin as a way of making transactions. As more and more people start to use Bitcoin, the value goes up higher. See, the thing is, Bitcoin cannot just be an investment. Unlike a traditional company, it doesn't create value and increase productivity. The only way for it to be more valuable is for people to start picking it up and using it. Think of it as a currency more than an investment. The more people use the currency, the higher its value is. With these big stores starting to accept it, it's a step in the right direction for the increased adoption of Bitcoin. Having said that, we need to look at some of the bear cases for Bitcoin, or reasons it could not fulfill its potential. The biggest thing for me is that it could be blocked by government intervention. Countries like China are heavily against Bitcoin and don't allow people to use it. The reason for this is quite simple. The whole purpose of Bitcoin is to have a decentralized currency that is not controlled by any agency. Imagine during the pandemic, when everything was super bad and the government didn't know what to do, the Federal Reserve decided that I'm just going to print money, I'm going to give it out to everyone, and I don't care what else happens because I need the stock market to be good. They can do this by printing more money and have no repercussions in the future. However, if Bitcoin was the main form of currency, they won't be able to do this anymore. This is because they can't print Bitcoin and they can only keep a reserve, meaning every time they give out money, the reserve becomes smaller and smaller, and the only way to get more of it is to buy more in exchange of US dollars. So if you think about it, allowing Bitcoin to boom means the government is releasing control of money. How many countries will be willing to do this? This is the main bear point, because if countries don't allow the usage of Bitcoin, the value will just not go up. The second bear point is related to what I mentioned earlier, is in that the value of Bitcoin is directly tied to how much someone is willing to pay for it. In a way, it's exactly like the US dollar. The US dollar in itself is just a paper and is worth nothing. The only value it holds is what we put into it. Let's say, for example, this 50 ringgit note can buy me this shirt. However, is the value of this piece of paper really worth the materials that are used to make this shirt? It's not. It's just the value that we put into the piece of paper that's worth the 50 ringgit. It's exactly the same thing for Bitcoin. It's just how much people put value into it. In a nutshell, adoption is key. If people start to use it more and more, the value will go up. But if people don't see the value in it and don't want to use it, Bitcoin will not go anywhere. Now, I just want to share a bit of what I think of Bitcoin. I see Bitcoin's potential as a 50-50. In one scenario, it could play a critical role in our daily lives, and on another, it could be blocked by government or have poor adoption rates and be worth nothing. Our position in this is, it has a great risk-reward ratio. Let me explain. Let's say we decide to invest 100 ringgit in Bitcoin. Could it drop to 0 ringgit? I mean, it could, although I would say it's very unlikely. But just for the sake of it, in this scenario, we would be down our entire investment of 100 ringgit. Could the price of Bitcoin double in value though? In our opinion, if it manages to fulfill its potential, it could 10 times or even 50 times its current value. If this were to happen, my 100 ringgit investment would be worth 1000 ringgit or even 5000 ringgit. With this, we have an incredibly favored risk-reward ratio. For risking just 100 ringgit, we have the potential to make 4900 ringgit. However, this is a very risky investment, so we need to treat it like one. Currently, my Bitcoin investment is less than 1% of my portfolio. As a general rule of thumb, I would say that your Bitcoin investment should never be more than 5% of your entire portfolio. This way, we don't expose our portfolios to cryptocurrencies too much and risk losing too much of it. Bitcoin is extremely volatile and you should only put in how much you're willing to lose. The same is said for all investments, whether it's in stocks, bonds, or cryptocurrency. Always put in an amount that you're comfortable with. Do remember that Bitcoin is way more volatile than stocks, meaning you could be down a lot more in one single day. If you're sold on buying Bitcoin, now I'm going to help you in terms of how do I buy Bitcoin. If you're an eToro user, the platform is so diverse in terms of its assets that you'll be able to buy Bitcoin as well. It gives you great convenience because you get to manage your entire portfolio in just one platform. If you're interested in signing up with eToro, you can use our link down in the description below. Personally, I prefer to use Luno. Luno is a cryptocurrency wallet which allows you to buy, sell, and store cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. The reason I like Luno is because unlike Bitcoin, I actually own the real asset and I'm able to use it to make transactions. This means that if I stumble across a store that accepts Bitcoin as a payment method, I can use the Bitcoin in my Luno wallet to pay for it. Using Luno, we can even send Bitcoin to friends and family. Imagine the day that you split dinner with your friends using Bitcoin. In terms of safety, Luno is probably as good as it gets in terms of buying cryptocurrency. We own it as an asset, and together with the cash in our accounts, these are all put into a trustee account that we will be able to recover from should anything happen to Luno. They're also the first cryptocurrency exchange to obtain approval from the Security Commissions Malaysia. Other than Bitcoin, you can also buy cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Ripple from Luno. However, I'm not very familiar with these cryptocurrencies, so I'm going to steer clear for now. Currently, there are no fees for buying Bitcoin on Luno if you're placing a limit order, and there's a 0.2% fee for making a market order. In my opinion, these are very low and should be no problem at all. The platform is also very simple to use and the interface is nice and clean, so that's a big plus. The main thing that I didn't like about Luno is the fact that they didn't have very much options in depositing. I mean, they only have one option, being bank transfers. I don't find this very convenient and I would like a much easier way to deposit money into my account. However, I don't see myself putting too much too often, so this is not really a big deal for me. If you want to try out Luno, you can use our code and we'll both get 25 ringgit worth of Bitcoin once you make a transaction worth 250 ringgit. That's it for today's video. Leave a comment down below on whether you would invest in Bitcoin and why. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and thanks for watching. Peace out. Ooh!